Madam Speaker, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
Can I ask you about some of the important news that's been made this week, particularly in the House, and that would be on Afghanistan? Last year, 32 Democrats voted against the funding of the war in Afghanistan. This year, 102 Democrats voted against. That seems to be a dramatic rejection from the president's own party of his major strategic goal.
Well, not quite. You have to put the votes in perspective. Our president came in. He was president maybe 2 months, 3 months by the time we took the vote last year. And the Republicans said they weren't going to vote for the funding. And so it took all Democratic votes. I persuaded my members to give this president a chance, to give him room in order to have time to implement his plan. And in the course of time, now the Republicans said they would vote for it. It gave my members the freedom to express themselves on the war in Afghanistan.
Now, you didn't vote. I know the Speaker doesn't have to vote, but how would you have voted?
Well, we brought the bill to the floor, and that was a statement that said that we knew that our troops needed to have what they needed to have would be provided for them. So we will never abandon our men and women in uniform. On the other hand, it gave our members a chance to express their view.
How long do you think you can keep your skeptical members, as you call them, on side?
Well, again, we have a varying degrees of expression here. We are there, we take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution and therefore the American people, and that's what people will be looking at. How does this figure into our protecting the American people? Is it worth it?
Well, is it worth it?
Yes.
Is it worth it?
That's the question.
But that's my question to you.
Well, as I say, we will seeing the metrics as they unfold in the next few months and certainly by the end of this year.
But what does your gut tell you?
In my visits to Afghanistan, the last time I was there was over Mother's Day weekend to see our troops. And the 4 metrics that we have always used year in and year out on these visits have been about security. And the military tells us this cannot be won militarily solely. Secondly, governance and ending corruption.
I'm just trying to figure out, for instance, what you think is the right thing to do in Afghanistan at the moment. I mean, look, Time magazine this week has this as its cover, a girl who's had her nose and ears cut off by the Taliban. To put it right down to its basics, is America going to abandon the women of Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan again?
Well, first of all, we're in Afghanistan because it's in our strategic national interest to be so for our own national security, to stop terrorism, to increase global security. The women of Afghanistan have been a priority for many of the women in Congress and men too, but the women have taken a special interest. When I was there around Mother's Day, I went to a province in southern Afghanistan and visited with women, and we talked about the education of their children, the health of women and the rest, and they, especially their daughters, they said, we want that, but that can't happen without security. And these women in this remote province told us, and that can't happen without the end of corruption. What we would like to see is for President Karzai to be a more reliable, a stronger partner, ending the corruption, improving the governance.
Vice President Biden talking about the deadline for what they now call the transition, which is summer of 2011. He said on this program a week or 2 ago that there's going to be a drawdown of forces.
It could be as few as a couple thousand troops, it could be more, but there will be a transition.
Does that square with what you think, that it could just be a couple of thousand troops?
Well, I hope it is more than that. I know it's not going to be turn out the lights and let's all go home on one day, but I do think the American people expect it to be somewhere between that and a few thousand troops.
Let's go to something much closer to home right now at the moment, and that is the ethics conundrum with Representative Rangel. How does your affection, your respect for him as a colleague square with what's going on right now and what you said and declared, that this is going to be the most ethical Congress, that you're going to drain the swamp of any kind of wrongdoing, corruption, etc.?
When I came in, we said, we'll drain the swamp. And we did. We had passed most sweeping ethics reform in the history of the Congress. Any personal respect and affection we may have for people makes us sad about the course of events. but we have to uphold a high ethical standard, and none of our personalities is more important than that.
Can you see Congressman Rangel ever returning as chairman of the Ways and Means or in any position of leadership in the House?
Well, the Ethics Committee is working its will, and
no matter
that's
what
where
happens.
It's an elementary discussion, because what we have done is they wait and see what the committee decides. I respect what they do. I'm totally out of the loop. It is independent. It is confidential, classified, secret, whatever. We don't know what it is, but we do respect the work that the members of the committee do.
Let me ask you about the midterm elections. You are, by all accounts, one of the most, if not the most powerful and successful speakers in the history of the United States. You've passed so much legislation. The president was elected with a significant majority. You had control of both houses of Congress. And yet now, people are talking about you might lose your majority in the House. The gap seems to be growing wider between what's achieved and what's making an impact with the people. How did this happen?
Well, that's one version of the story, and
But from
as you
outsider's
pose
point
it,
of view, many people are asking that. How have you got to the place where perhaps you might lose your majority?
we don't see it that way. We're very proud of the agenda that we've put forth for the American people. Our recovery package, as the economists have said, we'd have twice as many people unemployed as there are now if we had not moved forward. These actions are all controversial because we were digging our way out of a deep ditch. So we've been legislating for the past 18 months. The other side has been in campaign mode for 18 months, saying no, stopping job creation and the rest. But our members are the best salespersons for their own districts. They've been elected there. They know their constituents. They know.
Are you nervous about November?
No, I'm not nervous about it.
Not at all.
No,
Because people say, I know you're putting on a great face as you have to going into an election, but people say there's some considerable worry about what will happen in November.
Well, let me say this. I never take anything for granted, and our agenda now is we're not going forward. We're not going back to the failed policies of the Bush administration. We're going forward.
So what did it make you feel then when the president's own spokesman said that you might lose the majority?
Well, with
But
all
how
due
did you
respect,
feel about it?
I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about what the president's employees say about one thing or another.
But it directly impacts.
They must realize that. But you know what? I'm the Speaker of the House. I have a great chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, Chris Van Hollen. We have a solid plan of messaging and mobilizing at the grassroots level and management of our campaigns, and we have a 2-to-1 advantage money-wise. So we feel very confident about where we are, whether that's well known to that gentleman or not.
Let me ask you about the tax cuts. Are you going to take that issue to a fight before the elections? Letting the tax cuts for the 250,000 expire and then keep them on for the middle class?
Well, the tax cut for the wealthiest, the $250,000 and above, were the Bush initiative. I don't see any reason why we should renew a tax cut that only gives a tax cut to the wealthiest people in America, increases the deficit, and doesn't create jobs. That doesn't meet any standard.
I know that's your position, but to keep the middle class
But to keep the middle tax cuts.
Would
Recovery
you take
Act
this to a vote before the elections?
It would be my hope, but let me just say, on the Recovery Act, nearly $300 billion of the Recovery Act were tax cuts for the middle class. Most people don't realize that. The Republicans want to have the tax cut, and they want it unpaid for, $700 billion added to the deficit for an initiative that does not create jobs.
Can I show you something?
Sure.
There's so much polarization, so much partisanship, so much, not just amongst the politicians, but in the press, amongst the people. You've talked a little bit about what's, us and them in your view. I want to show you this, which is a Republican commercial.
Safely confined to liberal San Francisco, Pelosi has grown into a power-hungry Goliath, defying the will of the American people. Who has the power to stop her? Who can save America?
I haven't seen that before.
Have you not seen it?
I've not seen that, but I have seen that in campaigns they have
So
tried
what do
to
you
make
think about that? You being the bogeyman
Well, what I know about that is that they tried this. This was their campaign in Pennsylvania 12, the 12th Congressional District of Pennsylvania. Their whole campaign was an attack on the president and on Pelosi.
But it's you, yeah.
And Pelosi. I said to the president, I think I may have gotten more focus here than you for this one time. And they fully expected to win the race, and we won by 8.5 points. Because this is funny, it attracts attention, but they have nothing to say about what they want to go for. What they want to do is privatize Social Security, and as they have said, their agenda, if they win, is to go to the exact agenda of the previous administration, and people will look with fondness on the Bush administration. We welcome that campaign.
For me, looking in from outside, it just seems there seems to be a never-ending partisanship. What is it you can do for the people in this highly polarized situation?
Well, first of all, what you describe as a highly polarized situation is a very big difference of opinion. The Republicans are here for the special interest. We're here for the people's interest. The president has said we will measure our progress, our success, by the progress that is made by America's working families. That is our priority. That is not their priority. This isn't about inter-party bickering. This is about a major philosophical difference as to whose side you're on. You don't like to think that. We come here to find our common ground. That's our responsibility. But if we can't find it, we still have to move. I've never voted for a perfect bill in my life. I don't think anyone has. I wish it were not so stark. I wish the election weren't so necessary for us to win. I really do, because there should be more common ground. Are we unhappy that job creation has not gone as fast as we would like? Well, we were digging out of a very deep hole, but we will continue to fight.
Speaker Pelosi, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Well, I look forward to welcoming you back soon again.
Thank you.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
Much success.
And for more of my interview with Nancy Pelosi, please go to the This Week page at abcnews.com.